Speaker. It now gives us great pleasure to introduce Sean Flores, also known as John Flowers. I think it's incredibly appropriate that Sean is welcomed at our third annual BAME Leaders Conference. Sean was sat where you are sat this time last year. Who knows, maybe one of you will be sat or stood up here giving a talk next year. Sean isn't only an activist and a campaigner, he was also one of our Roehampton students not 6 months ago, studied criminology and sociology, graduated this summer, and is now doing a master's in race, media and social justice at Goldsmiths University. I think I first saw Sean at a Black Lives Matter debate last year, and I think everyone in the room at the time was just really impressed, not only with his knowledge, but his ability to convey that knowledge in a way that everyone else in the room understood. But it was only January this year that I really got to know you at the leadership course that we did together. And again, just sort of found Sean really inspirational. I remember this exercise we had to do on public speaking, and everyone in the room was just sort of fascinated and dropped silent when Sean delivered this great critique of society. So considering all of that, he was a Roehampton student, graduated in a leadership course. He's the perfect person to deliver our second keynote speech at our BAME Leaders Conference. So please welcome to the stage, Sean Flores.
You guys can all hear me, right? Perfect. Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about education and the attainment gap. And my first quote from Mbembe, it's from a book called Critique of Black Reason that I'm looking at, ironically, and it says, "To be black is to be stuck at the foot of a wall with no doors, thinking nonetheless that everything will open up in the end." And I think that quote is quite relevant, especially in the society that we live in, especially the education system that we live in, that effectively, some of us, I don't know if does anyone feel like the education system has failed them? Or does everyone? And if so, why do you think the education system has failed you? Anyone else? Go ahead.
I feel like it overlooks my experience in history and in my contribution because I'm not represented or reflected in the curriculum.
Okay. Anyone else? One more person? Go ahead. Okay. What if I told you that in this society you can make it irrespective of your skin color? Would you believe me? You can make it in society irrespective of your skin color. So no matter what your skin color, it doesn't play a part in the education system and society. It doesn't play a part. It does. Because I heard some people go, no, you can make it irrespective of society. So who says yes? Go ahead. I'll come to that after. You and I will be here all day. Okay. agree. Let me get into it actually. So basically, as Jack said, I graduated from Roehampton University for 2-1. Ironically, my first year and my second year, I didn't really take anything seriously until I hit third year. And I found stuff that I actually enjoyed, and that was black sociology. So black sociology, we did it for a week, and I learned about people like bell hooks, Du Bois, who talks about the double consciousness of the African American. Angela Davis, who I actually ironically didn't know until, how old was I in second year? 19, 20? Maybe about 19 or 20. I thought that was quite ridiculous. So as Jack said, I'm studying a master's now in race, media and social justice at Goldsmiths University. And Goldsmiths University, it's quite a good university, ironically. It talks a lot about decolonization. I'm going to talk a lot about that in the education system. So I started a group alongside Brandon over there, UBM. It was started off as Universal Black Minds, but a lot of people know I jumped ship. I didn't want to carry on with the ship. The ship wasn't sailing. So now we gave it over to Ashario, and Ashario has named it Universal BAME Minds. Some of my work, I've worked as a mentor for Junior University with Brandon, Deji, working in schools where Deji sings to the children, and the girls all love him, number one. It's true, Deji, you can't lie about it. I've worked with organisations, 2020 Change, going into prisons, talking to the prisoners. 100 Black Men in London. I would recommend you write some of these organisations down, actually, ironically. But 100 Black Men of London, Black Sox, mentored by Viv and Lee Jasper. So Lee Jasper used to be, I can't remember his exact position, but he was in a position next to Ken Livingstone. Working with the Forefront Project, Key's House as well, and involved with the Children's Service and Early Intervention team. So I'm going to get into it. Miseducation. So Carter Godwin Woodson said, when a Negro has finished his education in our schools, then he has been equipped to begin the life of an Americanized or Europeanized white man. But before he steps on the threshold of his alma mater, he is told by his teachers that he must go back to his own people, from who he has been estranged by a vision of ideals, which in his disillusionment he will realize that he cannot attain. That's from The Miseducation of a Negro. It's a very good book on talking about how, for example, black people over time have been miseducated and why the education system doesn't work for black people. Some of us come out of it and we've been able to do well with it. I've been able to do well with it because I've had the fire. And it's about the fire that you have. But in reality, the education system doesn't work. So, work conducted by Holloway in 2016. I wanted to keep everything that I referenced very relevant. I wanted to keep it relevant because a lot of people will go back all the way to the 19-something. I want to keep it within this century. Young black males are typically underperforming in schools. And why are they underperforming in schools? Does anyone want to give me a reason why they're underperforming in schools? None of you know why black males are underperforming in schools? Go ahead.
They don't believe in themselves.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, anything else? Negative label. I agree. Go ahead. Okay. And I fully agree with all of that. Especially working with a lot of black children, especially, the first thing they always say is, you're like me. And I think people don't understand birds of a feather flock together. If you see a lot of people who look like you, you're more likely to do well. And that can be reflected in every institution. So talking about especially the attainment gap, I think there's only 17 black professors, and I think it might only be 17 female black professors in the UK alone. So you can count that effectively on two hands, which I think is quite ridiculous, and it has to change. And as Brandon said, your skin color is not reflected in the teachers that teach you, and if that's not reflected in the teachers, how will the system be able to therefore reflect that in the subject material that they do give you? So Gilbourne talks about how underachievement for black people is a permanent feature of the English education system. The English education system, I don't know how many of us feel like we can relate to it. Does anyone feel like they can relate to it at all? Does anyone feel distance from it? Disenfranchised, marginal? Go ahead. Anything else?
The only history that we are taught is around slavery, not about the black people that actually made an achievement way before slavery.
Okay.
And then when there's other people from the background that see that black people are represented only as slaves, they get this ideology that we are only slaves, and then it will reinforce from there. I mean, it's 2017 and there's still being debate some of the big things that
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's true. The education system doesn't teach us enough about our own history. But I don't want to... Go ahead, Pierre. Okay. Yeah. And that's true. So, a social and systematic issue plaguing the black community resulted in many young black males ending up in prison. So that's in relation to the school-to-prison pipeline, and I think a lot of people associate the school-to-prison pipeline just in America, but there's a massive... It's huge in the UK as well. There's more African and black British or Afro-Caribbeans in prison total more in the UK than there is in the US. So if on average it costs about, I think it's 40,000 to keep a prisoner in the UK. So Wandsworth prison is full of black boys. Ironically, some that I know of. I don't know personally, I don't engage too much in that. But I want to create something where we were able to create a bridge between those who go into prison, those who come out of prison, and trying to figure out the reasons why they're actually in prison and why they've chosen that life. So a lot of people don't like Umar Johnson, but I like Umar Johnson. So I try not to, yeah, I like him. But economic castration, the failure to employ, being the father of all crime violence. Crime is reflective of your social conditions. If a man cannot read or write and cannot find work, a painful inferiority complex is initiated, which sooner or later transforms into a rage against the society and community that failed to protect its basic rights. So a lot of us know about capitalism, and I'm not a pro-capitalist whatsoever. There's people that believe that capitalism is the most effective system. There's people that believe capitalism will, I guess, save black people, but it's founded on the backs of our people. So Jeffrey and I always have this little argument, but some people think capitalism is colorblind. So that's what I said in terms of the miseducation. So this is the starting point for where I think if you miseducate a child to come into a society that sees him for a color that he's already been ascribed to, how can we arm them to have something that they can go out into society and actually realize, I'm going to have to work 10 times as harder. So black women typically have to work 3 times as hard. Black men probably have to work twice as hard. I'm not going to keep it quantitative in that sense, but we know we've got to work hard nonetheless. So, education. Miseducation is the mother of all crime and violence. I just spoke about that. Education, pessimistically, remains a never-ending feature for young black boys who are casualties hidden in the British education system. Racial inequalities within the institution of education are iconic and chronic, representative of inequalities entrenched in society. Exclusion remains a constant prevailing factor within the education system, as the large proportion of students excluded are black. I've heard a figure in my latest lecture that said, I think it's black students, especially black boys, are 160 times more likely to be excluded. Why? As Brandon said, if teachers don't understand some black children are not being aggressive, it's just how they are. The stereotype, again, talking about stereotypes and how these stereotypes have permeated the education system. And the biggest failure that we have is we have a poor vetting system, a poor vetting process for teachers going into inner city London schools and wanted to teach a black child. And again, this is black and white. So if someone who's lived, let's say in Essex, might not understand the struggle of an inner city London boy who's grown up without a father. And that's another one of the biggest issues, but I don't want to go too much into that because that's external. But, so yeah, talking about that kind of stuff. Also as well, how teachers don't understand children and their struggles when they come from. But someone would say, are teachers supposed to do that? They're supposed to teach. But that's obviously not going to be my argument. I don't want to read all of that, but it's just some stuff I got. So in terms of, if you're excluded from school, you're less likely to go out and be able to get a job, because people that want to employ you are going to look and realize, oh, he's been excluded in school. And when people think this doesn't affect you, it does really affect some people. Depending on the crime that you do, quote unquote, depending on the background you come from, depending if, for example, even if you see a psychologist, some employees will look and try and find what you've seen a psychologist for and prevent you from having a job because they don't believe that you're going to be stable enough for the job. So imagine what a lot of young black children are going through if, for example, they know that an employee knows that they don't have a father, an employee knows they've come from a certain background where they haven't been able to earn above 40,000 a year, if they haven't been to university. Is anyone here who's been the first to go to university in their family? Yeah, and I think that's quite iconic. And I want to find out, why did you want to go to university? Was it just a conveyor belt? Was there something else that you thought you could do? Anyone? Go ahead. Okay, why did you want to do that? Okay. Anyone else? No one else had a reason. Go ahead. And I'm sure you saw recently about the Rastafarian boy with the dreadlocks being refused for the school. Yeah, I can imagine. It's iconic. We'll go to the next one. So, talking about delayed gratification. So we usually associate delayed gratification with gratification that's going to come at a later stage in our lives. But for a lot of black children, especially black males, black females, again, this gratification never actually comes. So it's not delayed, it's non-existent. It doesn't exist in the first place. And if that doesn't exist, and again, as I said before, Black Lives Matter is the fight to be human, but to fight to be black in an education system is the fight to be, quote-unquote, civilized. So a lot of racial identity signifiers, black people have to fight twice as hard, in essence, to be called intelligent. So the way I've been classed as intelligent my whole life. I might not be intelligent, but intelligence is very subjective. Just because I have the ability to read and write, or I have the ability to recount a lot of facts, doesn't make me intelligent. We're all intelligent in our own different ways. But the education system, especially for young black children, tells them that there's a way to be intelligent, especially for them. And I'm going to go into that on my next slide. As Brandon again spoke about, alongside the national curriculums, a lack of an inclusive education to reflect a society that is multi-ethnic and diverse has served to continue to disenfranchise and marginalise young black males. And when we talk about that, the curriculum, if the only thing that we are taught is that we have a history that's bound in slavery, effectively you're putting black children in chains. Because if you never teach them, so we know about Henry VIII and he had 8 wives. We don't know about King, is it Mansa Musa? I think that's one of the few examples. There were black queens, especially in Africa, and a lot of the times. I haven't read enough into it. I've read a small part of it to know. But a lot of that is a mental war game. It's an inferiority complex, and this is the key word I really want to draw on, especially when I'm talking to you guys. And when I spoke about assimilation, everyone knows me that I don't believe in assimilation too tough, but as time has gone on, I've started to understand some people might have to assimilate into the system where some of us don't have the ability to fit within it. And assimilation as a part of, some people might say, especially being black, part of capitalism, it creates a competition, and it's an unhealthy competition amongst black kids. We're already at war with one another, and you've got to go into an education system and tell your fellow classmate, I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you at this, I'm better than you at that. And this is the issue, especially with public schools, state schools. Going to private schools and understanding some of what they do, everyone in the classroom already knows they're going somewhere in life because of their backing. Even if they've had a scholarship to get there, they're getting a completely different type of education. Whereas in public schools, you're taught to compete 24/7. You're taught that to be the smartest in the class, you're going to get the best, you're going to get the best gift. You're going to be able to do. I remember when I was in school, the smartest children they were able to go to, I think it's UCL, the top university. So it gave them something to reach for, something to aim for. Whereas a lot of black children who are pushed down at the bottom, typically, what do they have to aim for if there's no way that's up for them? If the only thing that they see is down, again, it's down to your personality to be able to see up. And this is what the education system fails. And talking about delayed gratification, and it's a state of lacking, as I said. If that gratification never comes, you are lacking something. There's something that's never going to be there. And that's especially from slavery. And that's especially from the insecurities that we have. And the insecurities that we have, as someone spoke about on the panel, there's a distrust within our own community. And how can you trust a system that doesn't fairly reflect you? How can you trust an education system when you don't see people like you? So I'm sure we've seen in Roehampton, there's not many black teachers. I think I can count maybe 5 that I know personally. Does anyone have any black teachers? And how do you feel having a black teacher? Do you think it makes a difference?
Yes, well, I'm from America, so when I first came here, most of my lecturers were white, and then when I switched into the class, and when I saw that she was white, I felt more comfortable, more at home. I felt more like I was able to communicate exactly what I wanted to say without having to fear of what they actually understand what I'm saying.
Perfect. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'm not a student here, but my mom came to this university to do her master's about 2 months ago, like she just finished. And she did drama therapy, and in that, like, they're learning about themselves, they're learning about their culture. My mom actually had to fight to get the black teacher that's in there right now. So she actually got kicked out because of that, and only now they let her go back in and finish her course. So it's a good point what you're saying, because they literally kicked her out and she fought for a black teacher in drama therapy in my house.
Perfect. Anyone else?
I'm not a student. I'm a lecturer here, and in the law department there are actually 2 black student lecturers. So I think the social sciences are probably leaps ahead of a number of other departments.
Perfect. Okay. Last one.
I use the counseling services on campus, and I had one the lady that was counselor. Yeah, that's the name. She was black, and she said first thing that she said to me was, "I'm a black woman from Birmingham. How do you feel about me being your counselor?" And it was so helpful because she was able to understand the issues I was coming with, being a minority, also being someone that has to grow up with a culture that a white counselor may not have understood, like the different pressures of and being able to navigate through that. And I think that was really important to me. Maybe if I didn't have her as my counselor, I wouldn't be on the tough journey that I am now with mental health. So that was important.
And I think we've all come to the conclusion that having someone that you can see that's relatable to you in skin color, culture, helps. And I think we can't deny that. Another random fact is in 2015, black British children, only 47% of them passed their GCSEs. That's not half. And so someone rightly said again, we are the global majority, and there's a large majority of black children, black people in the UK. How is there only 47% passing? I could get more recent statistics, but I didn't want to focus too tough on that. My next slide. So, talking about the attainment gap. How does it persist in post-racial Britain? Britain's post-racial. Britain doesn't focus on race anymore. Race isn't relevant. I don't know whether you believe that. I obviously don't believe that. I went to clickbait, but none of you fell for it. You all sat there like you believed it. But the educational system is clearly not post-racial. In my belief, and as I said, in the vetting system, teachers need to study something where they understand racism. They understand that racism is still a pervasive part of our society, and it's not going to go away any soon. It's embedded in humanity. There's no way to take racism away from people that have thrived upon racism. The West is built upon racism. Andrews, he's a lecturer at Birmingham City University, and I believe one of the statistics that they found from UCL, if I'm correct off the top of my head, British slave owners they had reparations of $2 billion from when slavery was abolished. And Britain led that whole fight towards getting slavery abolished. And we all know why Britain did it. Britain wanted to be the moral capital of the world, wanted to look like, oh, we abolished racism, so this makes us better. We did this, so our society is better. And that's, again, the issue with the West's complex. The West's complex has always been about, I think, thinking of themselves as better, presenting themselves as civilized. And that's another issue in colonization. If anyone studies colonization, if anyone wants to talk about the issues that are happening in society, it's because of colonization. It is a psyche. It's not just... So if we understand Africa is not just a place, if we understand Africa is also a mindset, that's why the diaspora can move all over the continent and still bring culture. So Brixton, it's the home of the Caribbean now. Well, not anymore. No, it's not home of Africa anymore. It's gentrified. The same way Turtle Bay is like, it's a gentrified Jamaica. I don't know where everyone's been to Turtle Bay. It's a joke. So it's stuff like that we're suffering from. Maybe another reason why a lot of black university students maybe are dropping out of university, it's expensive. You've got debt hanging over your head. We've just spoke about $2 billion being given out to those slave owners for owning slaves. How much more of a mental slave do we want to be to high credit, to having debt above our head? Like, we already have a debt in life, and our debt is being black, the fight to be human, the fight to be, just the fight to live, to exist, as someone also said. So recognizing all of these things, I think we've got to start seeking to understand, why do people drop out of university, or why is university never their place? University is not built for everyone, and I think we also have to remember that. Some of us are better with our hands, and that's still a skill. You're still intelligent. You're not stupid. I'm not great with my hands. The only thing I'm good with my hands with is probably... I'm not good at the only thing I'm good at my hands if it's like making gestures or, yeah, that kind of stuff. But, so yeah. Colin Kaepernick, my boy, I really respect everything that he does. This is a big issue. We are celebrated for achievements of the body and for never of the mind. And the issue is, playing sport, there is a lot of cultural capital that comes with it. So any of my friends who go and play sport, I'm like, you play sport, you'll have more to say than I probably will ever in this society, because people know what comes with sport is you get a massive platform. So a lot of people probably felt like Colin Kaepernick, but never had the ability to ever talk about it, or never had the bravery to talk about it. So, black British homes, men are encouraged to be involved in sport. I don't know what home that is, because my mum encouraged me to sit down and read my book. She stopped me from doing any kind of sport. And sometimes I think parents have to understand, if your son or your daughter, because forgive me, some of this might come across as it's just men, but I want to talk more about the women's side. We can do both. We can do both. And if we have the ability to tap into one field, why can we not have the ability to tap into the other? And if that leaks from our childhood to make us think the only thing we're ever able to do is play sport, or to only be academic, we are limiting ourselves. We're not reaching the best of our potential. Reading is perceived as feminine. So when I say to people I read, or if a girl wants to come and talk to me and they're like, oh, the only thing you do is read, people get turned off, because reading is not sexy, reading is not intelligent. Although it should be. We come from a generation, I think now millennials are starting to read more and starting to become more revolutionary and recognize that they are one of the greatest political agents. And being locked into that mythical black hegemonic masculine identity, it's very restrictive. There's not much place for us to go, especially as men. So I think a lot of us men, how many of us feel like to be educated is cool? So that's good, and that's a good thing. Why do you feel like it's educated to be cool, first of all? Why is it cool to be educated? Anyone want to answer that?
I think it's cool. I think it's necessary. I don't care about what's cool.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's always nice to, go against the stereotype, especially when you're speaking to, let's say, white intellectuals, and then you start speaking, this guy's not from, he actually has, and it's actually nice to play people like that.
Perfect. Anyone else? I agree. You can't separate the both. So the media, the biggest institution that. So I think people don't realize that television, I think when you break it down, means television. So it's someone that programs you to think what you want to believe. So everyone's seen Get Out. About interracial relationships, so it's basically says you don't have an interracial relationship because effectively what white people want to do is use your body as a commodity. We've always been a commodity from colonization, from slavery. That started the first global network. That's where globalization started. And that's how neo-colonialism is continuing to permeate society. I could talk about that all day. But again, black bodies are hypersexualized. Black bodies are... You see, so anyone's seen Serena Williams, and Serena Williams is always asked, does she believe she looks like a man? People say she looks like a man all the time because she's someone who has maybe wider hips, and she's stronger than most men in tennis, and not many of us want to admit that. And again, but that's whole masculinity and how fragile it is, and some people believe that slavery and the civilizing mission was as a result of white fragile masculinity. They believed that was part of their identity, where they wanted to feel as if their masculinity depended on enslaving other people. That's where a lot of people, so I think a lot of us don't know that a lot of tribes, so everyone's heard about the Mandingo tribe. They were known for their large appendices, their large penises is effectively what they did. And one of the first things that they did was cut their penises off, because a lot of people felt insecure. They realized not a lot of them had, some people might say, the capabilities to pleasure a woman in this way. Some black people could. I don't want to hang on that stereotype, because I don't believe it's always true. So, yeah. As I said, there's not enough spotlight on black intellectuals. So, last year we had Akala, but how many of us can talk about intellectuals within the UK? I think Emma DeBerry is another good one. She's a PhD lecturer at Goldsmiths University. I'm always supportive of her work. Does anyone know any other black intellectuals in the UK that they can reference their work from? Go ahead. Who? Paul Wilmington? Perfect. Stuart Hall? Perfect. Another one. Anyone else? Perfect. Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Huh? Anyone else? Anyone else? The UK, that's what I'm saying, focus on the UK. Anyone else? I don't think we even got to 10. I think we got to about 7, 8. You got another one, Brandon? Ron Buffett. Nope. So we could come to the conclusion we couldn't even get to 10. But how many of us can count US scholars? Give me some names. Who else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone know about Audre Lorde? Know about Audre Lorde? Anyone else? Who? Dr. Umar, okay, anyone else? Anyone else? I think it's almost frightening that there's not many black scholars that we can throw off the top of our heads, and I think I'm victim of that too. Foucault, Marx, Engels. I can go on about all the lists all day. I can go on 24/7. I think another good scholar maybe you guys would be worth listening to would be Claudia Jones. She's from Trinidad. She was a Marxist. I think she learned a lot from being in England as well. That's another one I would really recommend. But she's not from the UK. She's from Trinidad, as I Okay. So, talking about models in the wrong roles, talking about the media again, beyond the chicken and beyond the music genre. My issue, especially with the media nowadays, anyone seen the Chicken Connoisseur's videos? How many views does he think he's hitting? How many views is a man getting for eating chicken, perpetuating the stereotype even further? Is he getting on the media? About 1 million. How can my man go on ITV talking about backing chicken and his age? It's a joke. But it's stuff like that again. We laugh about it, but it's a joke. And a lot of us, like, I don't eat meat, I'm plant-based. A lot of people turn around and go, you can't be black if you don't eat meat. A lot of us have faced this issue going plant-based. Again, veganism is a gentrified Italis Vital Rastafarian concept. Rastafarians have been eating plant-based for days. Don't believe the Rasta man on the internet that turn around and tell you jerk egg is vegan, because it's not vegan. No, that's one of my biggest issues again. So people like George the Poet, I met his uncle yesterday when I was in House of Fraser of Richmond, so I'm going to hopefully contact him. But he's an activist. He wrote a selection of poetry, really good. I think it's Search By. Has anyone ever seen Search By? You seen Search By? Has anyone else seen Search By? You seen Search By? What did you think of Search By?
I like how he spoke about how his friends are the ones that helped him get to where he was, like, being that he took on that role model and he's trying to give back and kind of say, like, finally, you guys can come up with me. Who else is with me?
Definitely. Anyone else seen Search By? Does anyone else even know of George the Poet? And that's the issue. We know about the Chicken Connoisseur. He's a man who eats chicken and gets paid for it. Effectively, I can make a career off YouTube by going to vegan restaurants and just talking about if they're good or bad. Doesn't that show the complacency in the society that we're living in? The complacency that the media keeps us plugged in with a bunch of nonsense. But I understand at the same heart to always fight against something can be very hard, it can be very exhausting. But I think it's an ability we need to start getting from now. So anyone knows Section Boys? How many views do they get on a video? 2, 3, 4 million. And what are they talking about? Trapping ain't dead, but the Connect's still breathing. That's effectively what they're talking about. It's about drugs, crime, violence. I only know the song because of Deji. Deji sings all the time. But, so they made their career, and where do they live now? Where have they moved out to? Kent. So they siphoned off what they've wanted from the black community. They probably are part of the culture, and let's not deny that. I'm not going to downgrade them. But they've gone and they've moved out to Kent. The same with people like Stormzy. Stormzy lives in Chelsea now, ironically, and when his door was raided, in my eyes, it was only comical because what do you expect? In a white, upper class, middle class area, do you expect any different treatment? And this is the issue. Did you want to say something? Was anyone going to say something? I thought someone said something.
You have a point with that. I do agree with that. They get what they want from black community and move away from that. But do you not think that black community has a part to play in the job? Because I remember this is an old story about Chief Keef. Chief Keef was from Chicago, and the minute he got famous, he moved out of Chicago because he knew that if he stayed there, the black community around him would start to be envious to him, would start to plot against him. So do you not think it's more of a case of, you know what, this is just my own safety, and now that I'm famous, now that people I know I have stuff to take from me, like I'm rich now, they know me, this and the other, wouldn't it be better than to go over to the sort of community rather than stay where you are?
Again, that mistrust comes from colonization. The first process that they did was they put people from different cultures who spoke different languages all in the very same camps. And what happens is you don't know how to speak a common language. Mistrust is formed. Especially when you talk about Chief Keef, he left the community because he has envious. The first thing slave owners did in slavery, they taught only a select group of slaves how to speak their own language. Does that make sense? So when you've limited and you've stopped it, those who you could say, know the language, know the politics, it's created a mistrust barrier already because there's already a privilege. They already know something that the slaves don't. And a lot of them in their fight to survive would beat on and hit on their brothers and sisters and so on and so on. So I think we have to remember it comes from somewhere because a lot of people, it's very easy to say, just get over it. But it's a psychological trauma. And I think we can't forget that. Are you asking me or are you telling me? I'll answer that in a minute. Sister, I saw you had your hand up. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Because white is seen as the standard of greatness in society, and it always has been. You find out? Yeah. As we've heard from everyone, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can decolonize the education system. Randall Robertson said slavery debilitated a whole people psychologically, economically, and socially. So when I'm talking about decolonization, some of you might not know what colonization means. So colonization is the process in which people had their areas territorialized through imperialism, through colonialism, through capitalist practices. I could go into it, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about decolonizing itself. So, decolonizing means the disappearance of empire as a political form and the end of racial hierarchy as a widely accepted political ideology and structuring principle of world order. Does anyone know what that means? Reading that, does anyone get what that means? What do you think it means?
I can use an example. Let's use the British Empire.
Yes.
The British Empire, unfortunately, has collapsed. In Nigeria, got their independence in 1957. Nigeria got its independence a little later than 1963. I should know this. And India got its independence, I believe, in 60s as well. So a lot of countries were able to dismantle the political form of Britain in Nigeria, Ghana, India, and all over the world began to come to an end, and they were able to establish their own independent government.
So, in no words, what you're saying is they were able to have a system that was free from British rule. Whether that be still there, but they were free in terms of an independence construct. So in terms of decolonization, it's taking out, so as I said, not many of us know a lot about black scholars. We know a lot about America and the UK, but it's about taking it out of the hands of the Western thinking. So the West has always been heralded as the intellectual superior on every single level. And it's about having a system where you can learn more about your own history. So if you can learn about Nigerian history, you can learn more about something that's more relevant to you and something that is stripped away from the biases. Whether that's possible or not is still questionable, but it's taken away from the biases of that colonialization has still given. So remember, you and I spoke about the war on drugs and how we didn't know about the war on drugs. We just see black people just doing drugs and we don't think of anything of it. We just think it's their fault, but we understood the structures behind it. So, talking in terms of, colonization has leaked into our education system. So colonization is the superior mode of thinking that doesn't let us learn something beyond slavery, that doesn't let us learn something beyond Black History Month. The only people we can recount are probably Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. And Martin Luther King, ironically, is being misquoted a lot in his life, actually. People don't actually understand that. The FBI framed him, ironically, for cheating on his wife. I don't know how true that is. I try not to judge him on that character except for what he stands for. White supremacy has indefinitely been the structure and political ideology since the beginning of colonization. The leading universities in the fight for decolonization have been Cambridge. Also, I go to Goldsmiths. Goldsmiths is really good at decolonizing. So the masters that I'm doing is the only masters that I have wanted to ever do in my entire life. Otherwise, I'd have gone to America. Another good university that's centered around Black studies is Birmingham City University. That's another good one. I would really recommend people, if you want to leave your course, leave Roehampton and go to Birmingham City. You'll learn a lot. But no, it's about learning more about who you are. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are a political agent. We are a body. Whether or not we want to be, it's our destiny, it's our fate. Brighton, Sussex University, and SOAS. SOAS is another really good university for that. So SOAS always have talks on decolonizing. There's a writer, I forgot his name, but he talks about the 9 pillars of coloniality. And I think one of them was Christianization. So that happened in Africa. I can't begin to tell you just how Christianity swept across Africa. And even Islam was another one that spread across Africa. I believe it was North Africa, if I'm correct, on the top of my head. Christianity was privileged above every other spiritual and religious practice because it's what came with the European imperialist force. Another pillar of coloniality was patriarchy, how men were always put above women. Always put above women, no matter what. I've read a little bit into the history, and I would like to believe that Africans valued the women a lot more than the European did. I would like to believe, I don't know, I haven't read enough on it to know, I've read a bit. Another pillar of coloniality was using the black body as a labor force. And that's why I said capitalism is not colorblind. As much as we want it to be colorblind, it's not. It started the first global network. And that's why I say to people, neocolonialism is a new form of colonialism. So internal colonialism, if I was to bring it down, would be Brixton. Gentrification is internal colonialism, no matter how much we try to deny that. So you would go to Brixton once upon a time ago, and I think it was 30 years ago, I think off the top of my head, I saw a picture. It was just full of black people, full of black culture. Now we have the Brixton, I'm not sure how long the BCA, the Black Culture Archives, have been there, but that's another really good place I'd recommend that you go if you have the time, if you want to learn more about culture, more about the struggles that we've been through. Now it's become gentrified. What I'm not saying, and I think what I don't want people to misinterpret is, white people learning about history is a good thing. Learning about our history and learning how they can undo themselves from their privilege that they're endemically born with is a great thing. However, a lot of people are not responsible or don't understand that when you come to such an area, you're driving out a lot of the people that have made a home there. So post-Windrush era, a lot of Africans and Afro-Caribbeans came to Brixton and made it a home and a hub for people. So that's why you see hair shops, see a lot of Caribbean shops. And now that's starting to evaporate slowly as gentrification is happening. So decolonization is very important. It helps us to conceptualize the world and understand how we are. How do we decolonize? This is my own opinion, but as Foucault says, power and knowledge are inextricably linked. You can't separate the two, they come part in part. And having economic and political autonomy. So I believe as a people we don't have enough autonomy in the political sphere. We always had someone else representing us, and I think it was good that the Grime movement supported Corbyn. Whether or not we can create our own political body, that would be great. I don't know how many people will support that, but it would be amazing. The economics are really important. So we're always talking about the mistrust, and we're not pouring into our own communities. So sometimes we go to a shop that's black owned and we go, it's a bit too expensive, so we're not going to put money into it. But at the same time, people don't realize when you're putting money into that black business, you're supporting a child's dream. You're supporting a family's dream. They may be able to go on holiday, but they might be able to do anything they can just by you buying one item in their shop. And it's very important. I'm not saying I follow it fully to a T, but I try to as best as I can. So the chains that I have on, they're black, from a woman called Arts Throw. I recommend you check her out, she's quite good. But that's all part of the decolonizing process. And part of the colonizing process was you lose trust in your own people. And I think that's something we also have to remember. In conclusion, I'll read this out. We require equalizing institutions. In a British society, as a plethora of systematic structures endure prolifically and insidiously disenfranchising and marginalizing young black males. We ought to decolonize the educational system, in my belief, and I hope that the attainment gap will become a lot smaller through that. It's time that BAME, specifically for this talk, we learn our own histories. Hopefully it'll give us a greater interest, a greater vested interest into what we want to learn. And I think at the same time, I've learned that Roehampton has over 50% BAME students. And it's quite sad, but it's heartwarming at the same time. You guys are here and you guys have stayed this long to listen. If we get more and we pull a lot more people to come, that would be amazing. So I want to see ACS here, UBM are here. I'm calling upon all of those institutions that have the time and want the time to come and sit here. So I've gone to an ACS meeting and not attacking them, but some people might say, they spend more time discussing trivial issues. They are issues in our community, but on the long haul, will sitting down debating these issues do anything better for our people? And we have to remember, if anyone ever feels like you are being called a racist, you're not being called a racist, you are race first. There's a huge difference. Racism is the act of actually discriminating and being prejudiced against the people, and racism comes from a systematic structure. It's not an individual exchange. Individuals exchange of discrimination, and so on and so on. And in conclusion, with the present social system continuing to promote widespread prejudice, an inherited legacy for generations of black families in Britain will continue. And that legacy will be disenfranchisement, marginalization, the prison pipeline. And it takes a lot of us. Even if we got a job and we mentored one black child, we could help save a community, because it takes a community to raise a child. And that's me done. I'm going to give you my references.
Thank you, everyone. Can we have another massive applause for today? Brilliant. So we finally come to the end of the conference. Yes. But it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being really engaged throughout the day. All of the speakers have been amazing. I've learned so much, and I'm sure all of you guys have too. I would also like to just reinforce the fact that both Choo Choo and myself, when we ran in elections, there was no one like us before. But now we really want to encourage you guys that when it does come around to elections, please do run, because there is a space for you at Roehampton in the RSU throughout the year. So please, 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 if you haven't thought about it before, please think about it. And also, the final thing from me, can we all have a massive, massive round of applause for our RSU team, because none of this could have happened without them. And also, could we please have Kaiser and Amina, or is she gone? Oh, okay, and Sean, to the front, please.
As a sign of our appreciation, it's nothing big, but we wanted to give you a card, and we hope this will be the first of many kind of things that we can do with you and build upon this great relationship. So, once again, thanks everyone for coming. Honestly, for me, it means so much actually, the fact that you guys have taken time and effort to be here, as we see this great and wonderful thing that happens here, but people forget the planning that goes behind it, and you know, it's been an interesting process, but No worries. So yeah, like Joanna said, go out there, be leaders of today, be leaders for tomorrow, be leaders for the future. Empower yourselves. But empower yourself not only outside but also in the university. People forget that this is your university. So why not make change that matters right here, right now. Thank you. So, if you're like me, I am very hungry. So, we've got food at the back for everyone. Feel free to eat. Feel free to mingle and chat to each other.
If there is, oh my.
They say humans are social